And then there's also the fact that, of course, the world around us today is a lot, less stable than it was until a few years ago, and many countries are now starting to look inwards to develop sovereign capabilities because I think the writing on the wall is no one's coming to save you. So, Rahul, again, talk to us about this idea of sovereignty in the context of technological capabilities. What's important, what can we not afford to get wrong, why is 2047 so important? You call your fund industrial 47, we want to be Viksit by 2047. So talk to us a little bit about all of those things as well.
Lots of reasons for the 47.
Yeah.
You've illustrated on one of those. Yeah, I think the fundamental constraint is energy more than anything else. Like it is true of India in many ways very uniquely. You pump more energy into this economy, you will get a lot more output. We are significantly starved for energy. So if there's like a P1 that I would say, it's just more base load energy requirement in many ways. That was part of what formed the nuclear thesis while we've done fusion, fission with the opening up that's happened in this sector. Uh, and that's just one part of it. I don't think it's going to be necessary. Even that's graded. We've said 100 gigawatts by 2047, but like it, it's about 20 to 25 gigawatts by 32. That's a lot more important. We are at 9 gigawatts today in terms of nuclear capacity that we have available. So I think nuclear is one aspect of it. We're ramping up literally everything, including our grids. So if I have to talk about one thing that's important, it's energy more than anything else. Being able to just produce more of it internally as opposed to importing a large parts of it. So that's P1. I think P2 in many ways is what you'd partly call space intelligence, what you'd partly call jet engines or just propulsion devices in many ways. It's been far too much of a gag problem that we've had. And I just don't mean large level thrusters for just the Tejas program, but even for a multitude of swarm drone programs. If you come up today and the forces decide that, you know what, we need 20,000 supersonic drones, you just can't procure the engines required for it in many ways. And the reason these are critical for sovereignty is there's this very interesting concept it came from nuclear deterrence, where it said if you have one nuclear weapon, it's effectively, or just one way of delivering a nuclear weapon,
Yeah.
nuclear payload, it is effectively an offensive weapon. But the moment you have second strike capacity, it becomes a defensive weapon because that is where it's truly a deterrent in many ways. And that's the fundamental reason why it's called defense, the ability to be able to produce that. And there's a famous quote, you might have heard it as well, given our army background and stuff, where they say, fools study tactics, geniuses study logistics. In
Just
many ways,
yeah.
it's the supply chain that gets built out, is the ability to replenish that gets built out that allows nations to prevail in many ways.
Yeah.
So that's sort of part two. And the reason why I say the way I think of military or space as these sectors that allow us to do that is there is a insane demand that we have for it internally, which is not satisfied domestically today. And all of these industries then result in downstream industries getting built. That for each one of the things that all of these guys on the table need, there are going to be four other smaller SMEs that will get business as a result of it, possibly some that will get built. And I think that's how the industrial base gets built out. You decide that there are going to be three or four areas. So that's partly the thesis of why, while the fund's called Industrial 47, we focus a fair bit on defense, space, and manufacturing in these areas as such, because this allows for downstream to get built out. And that's why I say, again, critically, energy, think about these larger systems that we need to suffice. Then there's the very standard one that everybody knows about, like the classic baseline semiconductors that we require, the ECUs that we require. And these are all not cutting edge stuff. This is even basic stuff like actuators. We have what 2000, 2500, 2200 odd T72 tanks, all of which work on mechanical actuators.
Yeah.
All of them need to be replaced by different types of actuators. So it's this stuff that needs to get built out.
You're
And I
saying
think
even if we have an indigenous or a platform that's working, there's component dependency which we just can't afford to have. The other thing is when you go out and create, like when you go acquiring platforms, no one's going to let you have the best of anything. So the US will never let you have F-35A. You can have B and C. You'll never get the top variant. And if you hope to have those capabilities, you have no option but to build them, develop them in house.
No, without a doubt, you can have domestic. So localization and offsets is a big thing we talk about in defense. You can have 70% indigenous content and still not be able to fly the plane,
Yeah,
or fly the system, because the critical ones are just not under your control. And we can, and I think we're moving towards a way of diversification in many ways, where, for example, I think according to the latest 26 CIPRI numbers, our dependence on Russian imports is at about 40% right now. France is 20 odd percent, Israel is about 20 odd percent.
yeah,
So we're diversifying from just one particular country, but again, we are diversifying into dependence at the end of the day. So the idea is, and that's how it generally works. You have these three, four core technology areas where you will need to build out full stack companies. These full stack companies will be the first ones that will be the progenitors of the next set of companies. So actually, with the Skyroot launch, I was reflecting on it. I think what's going to be maybe even more amazing is there'll possibly be 10 companies that will come out of people who worked at Skyroot now, because they now believe that they can do it and they've pulled it off. And they will just have problem statements for Skyroot that they'll need to solve, each one of which could potentially become a new company 10 years from now. And that's how, in some ways, the technology trickle down works, I guess.